What good is a shooter if your character can't even look around? Today we're fixing that. In this video, you'll learn how to set up enhanced input actions for rotating, giving your player the ability to turn with yaw and look up and down with pitch. We'll create the input actions, bind them to our functions, and then configure them in Unreal so both the mouse and the right joystick of the gamepad can control your third-person character's view. I am Tony Munoz, and this is the Game Creator Accelerator channel. If you don't subscribe, you'll risk falling behind on the full process of building a third-person shooter step by step, along with the strategies and inspiration that can help you create not just games, but a real career in this industry. So hit like, drop a comment, and ring the bell to make sure you don't miss what could change your path in game development. In the previous video, where we finished was by just moving our character in all directions using WASD command and the gamepad. Now I want to create the yaw and the pitch when I move the mouse or when I use the right joystick of the gamepad. But before going there, I will open the blueprint that we created, the base shooter character blueprint. And in the viewport, I just want to go for the mesh. If I can close all this, you can see that we have the static mesh. I don't want to keep having something just transparent. So I'm going to pick a static mesh that could be something like this skeletal cube. This is going to be momentarily. Later, I will create a character. Now let's select the mesh and I want to make it a little bit bigger. In fact, I'm going to take one perspective to see the position. Now I'm going to stretch it on both sides. Let's say the scale for this one will be something like this and something like that. Compile, save. And if I play our game, now I have that kind of character in front of me. It's not just the capsule. Now let's go to the classes and open the shooter character. I will start with the header because I need to define two new input actions. Previously, we defined the action of move. Now I want to define an action for looking up and down and the turn action, like moving in the yaw. First, I want to create a new type of order here. I want to define the input actions first, and then I'm going to use the functions that we'll call. The next input action I want to create will be just a copy of this same property on the top, and this will call u input action look up action, and the second will be another u input action turn action. Let's add a couple of comments. For this one will be action to look up and down. And for this one will be action to turn or yaw. I want to add an important comment at this point. Look that for the first input action, I did the forward declare of u input action. This is because this is the first time I use the u input action. So in the next, I don't have to use the forward declare. Once you do it the first time, you don't have to do it the rest. But the important thing is that the first time you use it, the UI input action in your entire code has to be the forward declare. If not, the compiler is going to complain you. So if I move this declaration over this one, the compiler won't allow it. The second part is the functions that we will call. After the move function, I will create a new void function named turn, and I'm going to pass again an input action value by reference value, and I'm going to copy this and create another function named lookup. These two functions are going to handle the turn right or left and also the look up or down. I'm going to add some comments as well. Rotate controller based on mouse X movement or right gamepad X movement. And the last one, look up or down based on mouse Y movement or right GamePad Y movement. Now that we have the input and the actions or functions we're going to call, let's create them on the implementation file. Move the mouse over the name of the function, click here and select Create Definition. The same for the other. Let's save the header and go to the implementation. And here are both of our functions. Now in the implementation file, I want to set up the player input component so we can bind these new actions to the function of lookup and turn. To do this process easy, I'm going to copy this same line we use for the move action, only that, well, we're going to change the action. The first action will be the lookup action, and the other action is the turn action, if I remember right. Correct? These two actions are the ones that we declare here, lookup and turn action. The functions that we call will be lookup function, which is this one, and for the turn will be the turn action, which is this one. Now let's implement the actions. For turn, let's start with a constant f vector 2D. Let's call this one turn vector, and we're going to get it from the value that we are passing in the function, and we'll obtain the mf vector 2D. Here I have an error, and it's because it is not 2, it's 2D. And it's not fd vector, it's f vector 2D. Now it's okay. Next, I'm going to add a constant that will be a float value for that will be named term scale factor. And momentarily, I'm going to give it the value of 1. I will use this value in the future to define the speed of the turning, because depending on the fact that the player is aiming or not the weapon, I want this turning to be fast or slow. If you can imagine, when you play video games and you are aiming, and the moment that you're aiming, the speed of the rotation is slow. And I will achieve that using this turn scale factor. How? Well, because now I will add an add controller yo input. Add controller yo input, here it is. And I will use the turn vector, the coordinate x, multiply by the turn scale factor. And this will tell me how fast we're going to do the yo or the turned action. Something similar will happen with the look up or look down. Const f vector 2D look up, I call it look up vector value dot get f vector 2D, and we're also going to add a const float look up scale factor, and also for the moment is going to be 1. Different to the previous one where we did the yo input. In this case, well, you can imagine that we have another one called the pitch input, and in this one will pass the look up vector multiply look vector dot y, because that's a component we want, multiply by look up scale factor. Here it is. Awesome. You might be asking at this point, Tony, where the hell do you get these add controller yo input and the pitch input? Because we haven't defined these functions. Well, yes, we haven't, but remember that our original class is of the type, the A shooter class is a child of the class A character. And the class A character at the same time is a child of a class named pawn. Inside pawn, these methods are defined and we can use them as children of that class. Well, in this case, as grandchildren of this class. If you have any questions related to this method or classes, I recommend you to go to ChatGPT and ask a simple question like, in Unreal Engine to what class the method add controller yo input and add controller fetch input belongs. And they will present you with a detailed answer. In fact, look that we also have the way that we set up the input player component. This is when I say that you could use this type of tools to make your work easier. You don't have to learn by memory all these things. But if you know what you want to create, you can give the request to ChatGPT and then make the iterations in the directions of what you want to build. Keep in mind that learning technical skills is a key element for a game creator. However, it is just as important to know how to project your presence and connect with audiences, from studios and recruiters to die-hard fans and future gamers of your work. That's what we do in the Game Creator Accelerator mentorship. If you're serious about creating games and building a career around them, check out Woolen.com and reach out to me directly at tony@woolen.com or via my calendar link. All details are in the description. The sooner you start, the sooner you'll stop wasting time and actually move forward to your dreams. Now, let's continue. Now let's save and go back to Unreal. First, let's compile. We don't have errors. Save all. And the next step is to add new inputs. Right-click, Input, Input Action, IA for Input Action. Let's call the first one Look Up, and another Input Action, Turn. Let's open the iTurn action first. And remember that we need to handle the axis in 2D. So the value type won't be the Boolean, it will be axis 2D. And save. And now let's open the lookup. It will be also axis 2D, but we need to add a modifier because in this case for the lookup we want to see the y-axis. So I will add a new modifier, and as we explained in the previous video, we'll select the swizzle input axis value, which will change the axis of y and x. By default, this is the one that we need. If you need to change order, remember that you can select it from the list. Save and close. Now let's add this action in the input mapping context. Open it. Let's close the action move and add a new action. This is a bit annoying, but yeah, it is what happened. And let's start with the turn action. Open here, and first I want to select the mouse, but the X movement of the mouse. So click the mouse and select mouse X. The rest of the parameters stay as they are. Other action for the lookup. And in the lookup, I'm also going to use the mouse, but as you can imagine, will be the y-axis. Now, I also want to add a modifier for this one, which will be a negate. I'm going to make the movement of the mouse do the opposite action. Excellent. This is a personal preference for me because I want the mouse to, I want the camera to move up when I move the mouse down, and I want the camera to move down when I move the mouse in front ahead of me. Save. And let's open our base shooter character, which is here. Look for the input. And in the lookup action, select the corresponding input action lookup, and for the turn will be the turn. Compile and save. Let's test. Fantastic, I can turn to both sides, but I cannot move the camera up and down. Why is this happening? Let's go back to our code. At the top of the code in the constructor, we need to add some lines that also belong to the pawn class. So after all the declarations we did so far, add b use controller rotation yaw. Let's start with the yaw equal true. B use controller rotation pitch equal to true, and B use controller rotation what is the last one? Oh, roll equals to false. This is the only one I don't want at this point. I don't want to roll my camera. So let's save, go back to our project, compile, and let's test. Now I can move the camera in pitch, and also I can move the yaw. The character is turning with us. That's something that we fix later on. But this is what we want at this stage. Now I also want to add the actions for the GamePad. Let's open again the mapping context, and let's start with the LookUp. For the LookUp, I want to add another control that I'm going to bind. Close all this because it makes things confusing. And from the list, I select GamePad. I need the right thumbstick, and the axis that I want to identify for the lookup is the y-axis. In the case of the turn, it's going to be something similar, except that I will take the GamePad right x-axis. Save and test. I can start, yep, it is working, but if I release the joystick, look what happens. Right now, I release the joystick. I'm not touching the joystick. And this brings us to a conversation that we started in the previous lesson where we were talking about the Deadzone. And I want to show you live what does it mean. Go back to the mapping context, and let's quickly fix this issue with a couple of modifiers. The first modifier we'll use is the Deadzone. Remember that the Deadzone defines a threshold for lower and upper. And the other modifier will be a scalar. And the value by default will be 1. This is a value that will multiply the Deadzone. The same thing will be applied for this lookup. So in the modifiers, add first the Deadzone and then the scalar. Save, go back, play our game. I'm using the GamePad, and now everything works as it should be. I can move my character, but also I can make my character rotate, pitch, and yaw. So we're going in a great direction, guys. This video closes a mini-series to explain how the input action works and how to set up using Unreal and C++. In the next one, we'll continue to create extra movement mechanics, including jumping, and add our character mesh finally. So before you go, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, ring the bell, and drop a comment to help this channel grow. I'd love to know what are the features you are most excited to add to the next third-person shooter. If you want to start your path in gaming, but you have a family, a job, and you need to pay the bills, there is a way for you with the Game Creator Accelerator Lifetime Mentorship. Visit woolen.com to learn more, and let's have a chat. More details in the description. Until next time, keep creating, keep sharing, and most importantly, keep dreaming big. I'll see you soon, my fellow creators.